Welcome back to our channel. This dime is worth over $100,000. Check your pocket change, like and subscribe before you spend it. The mid-1960s in America were defined by sweeping change. The nation was deep in the grip of cultural shifts, civil rights battles, and escalating space race tensions. Amid all of this turbulence, the U.S. Mint quietly implemented one of the most significant transformations in modern coinage, one that would forever change the physical composition of American money. In 1965, the Mint officially ended the use of silver in dimes and quarters for general circulation. Silver was deemed too expensive and unsustainable. In its place came a clad composition, copper sandwiched between two layers of nickel. It marked a new era, one of economy and practicality. But as with every major transition, something slipped through. Something unexpected. Though the Mint had stopped producing 90% silver dimes for circulation in 1964, the machinery, dies, and planchets still bore the marks of old habits. In the chaotic overlap of production, a rare anomaly occurred. A handful of 1965 Roosevelt dimes were struck not on the intended clad planchets, but on leftover 90% silver planchets from the previous year. The results were subtle, but unmistakable, if you knew where and how to look. Years later, in a quiet Pennsylvania suburb, an experienced coin collector named Franklin Dale was sorting through a newly acquired hoard of old change from a private estate sale. Franklin had been collecting since the 1970s, driven by an obsession with transitional errors and minting anomalies. He was no stranger to obscure varieties, but he never expected what he was about to uncover. Among the pile of familiar copper-toned dimes, one coin stood out. It looked ordinary at first glance, a 1965 Roosevelt dime, same design, same size, same luster. But its edge told a different story. Unlike its modern clad counterparts, this coin's edge lacked the telltale copper stripe. It gleamed silver from rim to rim. He weighed it immediately. The scale read 2.50 grams, heavier than a clad dime, which averages around 2.27 grams. It didn't match the profile of a 1965 coin. A jolt of adrenaline ran through him. Could it be? He ran a specific gravity test to determine metal content. The results confirmed what he had hoped but didn't dare assume. It was silver. 90% silver, 10% copper. The composition of a pre-1965 dime. Yet the date read 1965, and no mint mark was present, as was standard for dimes from that year. Franklin held in his hand a legitimate transitional error, one of the rarest known to exist. The 1965 silver dime is not an ordinary mistake. It exists because of a peculiar intersection of urgency and human oversight. As the Mint rushed to adopt the new clad composition, leftover silver planchets, possibly sitting in bins from late 1964, were inadvertently fed into presses alongside the newer ones. A small number of silver dimes were struck and released into circulation before anyone noticed. At first, few collectors believed they were real. The idea seemed implausible. How could silver dimes with a 1965 date exist when the Mint had officially ceased their production? But as more were discovered, always in minuscule numbers and under stringent scrutiny, a new truth took root. These coins were real. Authentic. Rare. Most of these silver 1965 dimes were found by sheer accident. One turned up in a bag of junk silver sold at a flea market. Another was passed down in a family collection with no known origin. A third was discovered by a teenager who noticed it weighed slightly more than his other coins. Each discovery carried its own story, its own wave of disbelief and eventual validation. The numismatic community was split at first. Some dismissed early reports as hoaxes, while others insisted the Mint would never allow such an error to leave the facility. But authenticated examples began appearing in major grading slabs, complete with compositional analysis and expert certification. The truth was undeniable. These weren't counterfeit coins. They were the byproduct of transition, an echo of the past bleeding into the present. As awareness of the error grew, so too did demand. Silver 1965 dimes quickly escalated from curiosities to centerpieces. Early sales saw them fetch a few $100s, but as competition intensified and verified examples dwindled, the numbers began to soar. Coins in average condition with confirmed silver content began to sell for thousands. Those in uncirculated condition, with full bands and sharp strikes, were valued far higher, and then came the twist that reignited the fever. In 2019, a Florida collector named Shayla Winton stumbled upon what would become the highest-graded 1965 silver dime known to date. Stored unknowingly for decades in a glass vial with a mix of Mercury and Roosevelt dimes, the coin had never seen modern grading. Once submitted, it was certified MS-68 with brilliant luster, strong details, and no signs of contact. It was flawless. Auction houses competed for the rights to sell it. When the hammer fell, the coin reached a final price that stunned even seasoned dealers. The 1965 silver dime sold $4,134,000. After the sale, interest in the coin surged yet again. Collectors began combing through old coin jars, dealer inventory, and inherited collections. The internet buzzed with new finds, hopeful rumors, and a renewed obsession with this ghost of an error. Grading companies reported a slight uptick in 1965 dimes being submitted for silver testing, most of which were clad, but every now and then, one more silver planchet survivor appeared, and what makes the error so compelling isn't just its composition, it's what it represents. The 1965 silver dime embodies a moment of transition, a misstep in the progression of currency, an overlap between old-world value and modern economics. It is a coin caught in the crossfire of change, a remnant of silver struck into a new era where silver was no longer welcome. Today, the confirmed 1965 silver dimes are few. Each one authenticated brings with it its own origin story, but the total number remains incredibly small. Some estimates suggest fewer than 24 are known to exist in verifiable silver content. They have become symbols of patience, vigilance, and luck. To find one is not merely to find a coin, it is to discover history in a pocket-sized capsule, and their value, once thought negligible due to the commonness of the date, has reached astonishing levels. Depending on condition, clarity of strike, and verified silver composition, the 1965 silver Roosevelt dime now ranges in value from $62,000 to $144,000. Even lower-graded examples command life-changing premiums, and the highest-end pieces continue to shatter expectations in private sales and public auctions alike. What began as an oversight, a sliver of the past pressed into a modern mold, has become one of the most captivating coin errors in American history. The 1965 silver dime is not just an error. It is a rare moment, frozen in metal, where imperfection gave birth to something unforgettable. And it waits, even now, in the occasional dusty coin box or overlooked collection, ready to change a life. All it takes is one sharp eye, one quiet discovery, and one glint of silver where none should be. In 1984, America was wrapped in the glow of optimism and power. The economy had turned a corner, the Olympic torch burned brightly in Los Angeles, and the nation found itself immersed in both technological curiosity and a resurgence of patriotic pride. In this charged atmosphere, the U.S. Mint continued its routine task of producing the currency that fueled daily life. Dimes, nickels, quarters, and cents flowed from the presses by the millions, each a tiny emblem of national order and economic rhythm. And yet, even in that regularity, an oddity was born. An anomaly so subtle that it could pass from hand to hand unnoticed, tucked away in lunch change or lost beneath couch cushions. But for those who paid attention, the 1984 Roosevelt dime would soon reveal something most extraordinary. Minted at the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, the 1984 Roosevelt dime was meant to be standard issue, copper-nickel clad, weighing 2.27 grams, with a reeded edge and a sharp, familiar profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt. But somewhere within the long hours and clanging machinery, a mistake occurred. Not one born of neglect, but of timing, pressure, and the fragile choreography of mass production. The kind of mistake that only reveals itself years later, when a collector, guided by instinct rather than routine, stumbles upon it. That collector was Helen Travers, a retired schoolteacher in South Carolina who had spent years cataloging minor coin varieties as a quiet hobby. It was never about money for her. It was about the thrill of decoding the forgotten language of small details, the angle of a serif, the spread of a date, the thickness of a letter. One rainy evening, while sorting through a bag of mixed coins from a local yard sale, Helen noticed something odd. A 1984 dime with an unusual relief. The profile of Roosevelt seemed slightly distorted, and the letters on "In God We Trust" appeared shifted, thicker in places and raised unevenly. To a casual observer, it would have meant nothing. To Helen, it demanded closer scrutiny. She compared the coin to others from the same year. The differences were not dramatic, but they were consistent. Under a 40x loop, the Liberty inscription showed evidence of strong doubling. The 1984 date had split serifs on the 9 and a shadow-like doubling on the 4. It was no optical illusion. It was a textbook case of a double die obverse, a rare striking error that occurs when the die itself is improperly prepared, bearing two impressions of the design out of alignment. Helen contacted a numismatic verification service. The coin was authenticated, graded, and declared a newly discovered error. Word traveled quickly. A coin that had gone unnoticed for nearly 40 years suddenly found itself at the center of discussions, articles, and auction listings. Other examples began to surface. Not many, just enough to confirm that the anomaly was not isolated. Each carried the same distinct traits: the obverse doubling on the text and date, and often a faint die clash pattern on the reverse, where the outlines of the obverse design had lightly imprinted across the torch and olive branches. What emerged wasn't just a rare dime, but a puzzle. How many had been struck this way? Why had they gone unnoticed for decades? And what caused the original die to deform so precisely? Theories ranged from hasty die re-engraving to misaligned hubbing procedures. But the truth, elusive as it was, only heightened the coin's mystique. Collectors began scouring their own 1984 dimes. Coin roll hunters poured through bank boxes. Dealers checked long overlooked inventory. The supply was scarce. Most of the dimes in circulation from 1984 were perfectly ordinary, but every now and then, perhaps in a forgotten desk drawer or tucked between old receipts, a double die example would surface. Each one sparked a new wave of excitement, new questions, and new auctions. The error's popularity was partly due to its subtlety. Unlike dramatic off-center strikes or coins missing entire designs, this double die was a quiet flaw. A ghosted whisper of a second imprint. And yet, that very subtlety made it more alluring. It required knowledge to identify, patience to confirm, and sharp observation to appreciate. The coin became a kind of rite of passage in the error collecting community, a test of skill, not just luck. By the early 2020s, the market value of verified specimens had climbed steadily. At first, the coins sold for modest premiums, $200, then $500. But once higher-grade examples entered the spotlight, the numbers shifted dramatically. An MS-66 version with strong doubling and clean surfaces sold at a major auction for $36,000. A year later, a pristine MS-67 with no visible contact marks, certified by PCGS, shattered expectations when it sold for over $98,000. But even that wasn't the peak. The twist arrived in 2023, when a previously unknown collector in Colorado unveiled a discovery made years earlier and stored in a private safe. His coin, wrapped in acid-free archival paper and untouched since the 1990s, was examined and graded MS-68. It exhibited the clearest doubling yet recorded, sharply defined, unmistakable, and accompanied by a faint clash that mirrored Roosevelt's jawline across the reverse torch. Experts called it the finest known example of the 1984 double die dime. The coin was showcased at the Long Beach Expo, where it sparked a frenzy of interest. Enthusiasts lined up for a glimpse. Journalists documented the history of the coin. Offers rolled in from major private collectors and museum curators. When it went to auction 2 months later, it fetched a hammer price of $112,400, setting a new record and pushing the 1984 dime into numismatic legend. That one auction changed everything. Prices for mid-grade examples doubled overnight. Even raw coins with suspected doubling, if authentic, began selling for thousands. Collectors who had once ignored post-1980s dimes suddenly gave them new attention. And the hunt expanded beyond dealers and enthusiasts. Everyday people began checking their spare change again, wondering if something rare lay hidden in the mundane. What the 1984 double die dime reminds us is that error coins do not always announce themselves with drama. Sometimes they whisper. They hide in plain sight, blending in with the ordinary until someone with curiosity and patience listens closely enough. They remind us that even mass-produced objects, stripped of individuality, can still carry the marks of human process, accidental beauty born from a mechanical misstep. Today, the number of verified 1984 double-die Roosevelt dimes remains low. Some experts estimate fewer than 60 top-condition examples exist. Each one a survivor of time, of chance, of oversight. And as collectors continue to unearth new specimens, the excitement surrounding this coin only deepens. Depending on condition, clarity of doubling, and grading certification, the 1984 double die dime now commands a staggering value range, from $48,000 to $112,400. These figures aren't speculative. They're rooted in verified sales, real bids, and real astonishment at how a 10-cent piece transformed into a six-figure treasure. The next one may already be out there, resting in a drawer, spinning through a vending machine, or sitting unnoticed in someone's pocket, because sometimes, in the world of coins, what seems like nothing at all becomes everything. All it takes is one glance, one moment, and the right eye to see it. In 2021, the world was still adjusting to uncertainty. Pandemic aftershocks rippled through economies, social routines were reshaped, and life felt paused and sped up all at once. Amid this backdrop, the United States Mint quietly carried on with its duties, striking coins to support a recovering nation. The Roosevelt Dime, a modest yet enduring piece of American currency, rolled off the presses in the millions, unchanged in design but still vital in circulation. With its copper-nickel-clad composition, 2.27-gram weight, and familiar torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, the 2021 dime seemed as ordinary as its predecessors. But among these uniform coins, a rare flaw escaped unnoticed. And it wouldn't stay hidden for long. The Mint's operations were under stress that year. Delays in metal shipments, staffing limitations, and logistical disruptions had all placed unusual pressure on production lines. With demand for coins still high due to a coin circulation shortage, speed became essential. In this climate, a few errors slipped past the rigorous quality controls. One in particular would soon emerge as the most intriguing of all, a misstep that would turn a standard dime into a sought-after collectible. Miles from the minting floor, a young numismatist in Oregon named Jacob Ellison was meticulously examining a fresh roll of dimes purchased from his local bank. A longtime hobbyist, Jacob had a fascination with modern era coins, often dismissed by seasoned collectors. To him, the newer issues were fertile ground, ripe with untapped surprises. He had gone through over 1,000 dimes that week alone. But the one that stopped him came out of the 24th roll. It looked off, just slightly, but enough to draw his attention. The coin's reverse design appeared unusually sharp, while the obverse featured ghost-like images barely offset from their intended place. Under magnification, Jacob saw it clearly. The entire obverse, the side bearing Roosevelt's profile, displayed evidence of doubling. It wasn't the common shelf-like mechanical doubling. This was rounded, raised, and distinct. The letters of Liberty showed shadowed contours. The motto, "In God We Trust," had split serifs and bulging edges. Even Roosevelt's eye appeared doubled, giving his face a haunting intensity. Jacob's heart raced. It wasn't just a double die. It was a double die in a modern issue, in a year no one was expecting it. He sent the coin to a grading service immediately. Weeks passed before the results arrived, and when they did, they confirmed what he already suspected: double die obverse, mint state 66, full torch bands. It was one of the first authenticated examples of what would become known as the 2021 Roosevelt DDO. The announcement made quiet waves at first, largely confined to online forums and niche error coin circles. But as word spread, others began to check their 2021 dimes. A few more surfaced, each with the same characteristics: obvious doubling on the obverse text, mild displacement in the date, and sometimes faint signs of die fatigue. It became clear that a small batch of defective dies had produced these coins before being caught and retired. what made the error special wasn't just the doubling, it was the timing. By 2021, most collectors believed the era of dramatic mint errors was over. Mint technology had improved, quality control was tighter, and digital systems were supposed to prevent such mishaps. That a double die could still emerge under those conditions was astonishing. It revealed that even the most advanced systems weren't immune to human oversight and mechanical nuance. Unlike older double dies with decades to establish rarity, this 2021 variety was born into a digital age. News of its discovery spread instantly. Social media posts, YouTube breakdowns, and online auctions sprang up rapidly. Coins once traded for face value were suddenly commanding hundreds of dollars, and the top examples shot into the thousands. Jacob's coin, the first publicly recognized specimen, was auctioned for $42,000 just 8 months after discovery. The doubling wasn't the only element that fueled fascination. A subset of the coins displayed what appeared to be light die clashes, ghostly impressions of Roosevelt's profile bleeding into the reverse design, barely perceptible but enough to provoke debate. Were these examples part of a second error sequence, or were they evidence of a deeper issue in that particular press run? The mint made no public comment, leaving collectors to speculate, examine, and chase theories through every crevice of the coin surface. As more coins surfaced and were graded, their values began to stratify. Lower-grade specimens sold for several $1,000s. High-grade coins, especially those with full torch designations, fetched much more. The coin became emblematic of a new kind of collecting, one that honored modern errors as seriously as vintage mistakes. And then came an unexpected twist. In early 2024, a collector from Michigan submitted a 2021 dime he had kept in a personal album, suspecting it might have doubling. Upon grading, the coin was revealed to be not only a double die obverse but also struck on a defective planchet. The surface featured mild blistering, a rare form of lamination flaw, along with razor-sharp doubling. It was the only known 2021 dime with that combination of errors. At auction, it shattered previous records, selling for $76,800 to a private buyer. After the Michigan sale, interest in the 2021 DDO intensified. Coin roll hunters who had once passed over modern issues returned to the banks, scouring boxes for overlooked examples. Dealers added magnifiers to their booths, offering free checks of customers' spare change. Even non-collectors began asking if their pocket dimes could be the one. The appeal of the 2021 double die Roosevelt Dime lies in its accessibility and rarity, a coin from yesterday that holds the promise of tomorrow. Unlike ancient rarities locked in museums or high-end auctions, this coin may still be out there in the wild, undiscovered in a drawer or forgotten in a vending machine. Its story is a reminder that the age of surprises isn't over. That even in a time of precision and automation, the human element persists. And sometimes, that human element results in something uniquely flawed, and undeniably valuable, depending on condition, grade, and clarity of the doubling. The 2021 double die Roosevelt Dime now holds an astonishing market value ranging from $26,000 to $78,000. A coin meant to be passed without notice, now passed down as legend. Hidden in plain sight, waiting for the next sharp eye to recognize it.